Okay, welcome to Magic Resolutions Training for the 24 to 25 school year, focusing on Maimon.
I'm George. I'm going to be one of the trainers. I'm currently a PhD student out at Northwestern.
And I'm Elizabeth. Um, I am a sophomore at U of M and currently getting my degree in creative writing.
All right, let's get started.
Okay, so here are some important updates for what's new at Maimon for this year. Um, Committee and General Assembly resolutions will be required pre-conference, and committee resolutions, especially for for examples like DISEC, SPECPOL, Security Council, whatever's not General Assembly, are due by 11:59 p.m. on February 16th, 2025. And then GA resolutions are due by 11:59 on February 27th, 2025. Um, Magic staff will review the submitted resolutions and will select resolutions to be considered in committees and at GA at Mainman based on quality, content, and originality. And then for the resolutions in committee, delegates will draft resolutions for the committees and Security Council prior to Mainman. Magic staff will review the submitted resolutions and select resolutions to be considered in committees based on quality, content, and originality. Delegates will then have the opportunity to amend and vote on the pre-selected resolutions during committee. So all of the work on like the main resolution, it's all going to be submitted before the conference, and then we're working on amending and voting in committee. And then committee resolutions are due by 11:59 EST, February 16th, 2025. Resolutions are only accepted by online submission. So the submission link will be made available. It's right here on the screen, on maimononline.com. And you should not submit a Google Doc or any other document. Just copy and paste the resolution clauses into the submission link text box. And you would only number the operative clauses, do not number the individual lines. If you look at the left of this slide, it will show you the committee, like what the Google form will look like. It's very easy to follow. Um, and you'll just input the information needed in there. And then for resolutions in the General Assembly, delegates will be required to submit resolutions again prior to Mayman. And GA resolutions will be submitted by the entire delegation, not an individual delegate, to be discussed and voted on during GA. This is different than committee because it's not just you working on it, it's you with your delegation. And then GA resolutions are due again by 11:59 on February 27th, 2025. And like the committee ones, they're only accepted by online submission. And submission link will be made available at Maimon Online. Again, do not submit a Google Doc. Only number the operative clauses and just put in your information, copy and paste it in the boxes in the form. So the General Assembly agenda topic for this year is addressing the humanitarian situation in Syria and related questions. You can find the topic guide for this at Maimon Online. Give it a good look. Lots of great information there to help you with writing.
Speaking of doing research and starting to figure out your writing, we want to give some advice on what to do before you start writing your resolutions. So, one really big thing is just how do you research? This can be kind of a challenging thing, especially for your first time. So we recommend kind of starting pretty broad and then starting to narrow in on the actual issues. Start by just learning about the general topic, your country, and then you can start to figure out actual policy proposals. So kind of three main things that you want to focus on is background of the topic, the history of it, what led to the point that it's currently at, and who all is actually involved with it. You want to think of your country specific policies, what they've done in the past, what actions they've taken, what actions are they currently taking relative to the topic. And then you also want to think about why we're all here is how do we fix this? So, what possible proposals can you present such that you can actually solve the issue? What can be done? You can look at what the international community or your country has already done, but really this is where you can get creative and start to think about what options are there to solve this topic. We do highly recommend that you look at samples. We have both uh, resolutions from past students and an actual GA resolution that you can look at. That's going to really help with formatting, writing style, and then just also seeing the structure. We will talk about that a little bit later, but oftentimes it's really nice to actually see the full document. We do also want to note that plagiarism is not going to be tolerated, so it may result in the disqualification of award eligibility. This includes using AI or something like ChatGPT to try and write your resolutions. We want your own work. We want to see what you can come up with.
And now for when you're actually going to write, after you do all that research, is let's look at what should be included in a resolution. So there's three parts to a resolution: subject, what body is taking action, so the General Assembly, and then preambulatory clauses, which is facts, history of the issue, basically why you want people to pay attention to this in the UN, why this is important, what you're tackling in your resolution. Operative clauses are the actions to be taken. So then what you're going to do about it, what you're going to do about the issues you are noticing. Proper formatting. So a properly formatted resolution consists of only one sentence, just one long round sentence. Um, so you have subject and preambs, which are separated by commas. And then preambulatory clauses are separated by a comma and. And then operatives are separated by a semicolon. When you finally end the sentence with your last operative, it will end with a period. So preambulatory clauses, looking at the history of the issue again, who's involved, general statement of topic and its impact, statistics, quotes. You want to cite documents, so past UN resolutions, treaties, country declarations, and recognition of efforts already taken. So basically, we're at a point where the UN has existed for a while. So we've already tried to probably tackle lots of topics we're tackling. So you want to be like, this is what people have done. Now what, how are we going to make it better? How is, this has worked. What do we need to add to it now? We've seen how this played out. What's necessary action? And then why is GA addressing the topic? So facts and preambulatory clauses should relate to what actions are going to be taken in the operative clauses. Ideally, you want one preamble to connect to one operative clause. It's not always exactly that way, but ideally, yes. And preamble clauses cannot define any action to be taken on the subject. You're just stating the problem. And then that's all operative clauses are where you have that solution. Preambulatory clause formatting. So for formatting, preamble clauses are separated by a comma and. Each clause begins with a preambulatory phrase, and that preambulatory phrase is capitalized. So examples of preambulatory phrases are like alarmed by, emphasizing, having adopted, recognizing, all that fun stuff. And for operative clauses, this is calls for action. So this should be what you're doing, what you want to be done to solve the problem. It should keep in line with the goals of the United Nations, so maintain peace and security, international cooperation. So we want to make sure we're coming up with good ideas, basically things that are good for the world. Um, and for solutions, it should relate to facts laid on the preambles. Again, you want there to be strong connection between preambulatory clauses and operative clauses. And then operative clauses should support one another and continue to build your resolution. Should be substantive, so provide details to have a complete solution. And this is not like a complete solution for the whole topic of your committee. It's a complete solution to the part of the topic that you are tackling with your preamps. So it's about humanitarian aid. You want to have a complete solution for the preamps that you brought up. So basically, the preamps are the confines of your resolution. That's what you're setting up in the operative clauses. Should be tackling each point you made in your preambulatory clauses. So example like dated end goals, requesting specific nations to be taking specific actions and specific type of aid. Um, and then for formatting, you want them to be numbered. Each operative phrase is capitalized, and then operative clauses are separated by semicolons. And again, period follows the last operative clause at the end of the sentence that is your resolution. And examples of operative phrases are designates, recommends, requests, and supports. And this is a look at a sample resolution. We can see that it says the General Assembly, that's our subject. And then we have our preemptory clauses with our capitalized preemptory phrases. And each of our preemptory clauses has comma and. Our operative clauses directly connect to our preemptory clauses. And we have proper operative phrases. And we have semicolon after one and a period at the end after two. And so this is for GA resolution online submission. One person from your delegation, only one will submit online. You will copy and paste the preemptory clauses and copy and paste operative clauses. The operative clauses should be numbered. One, two, how many you have. It's pretty simple. You just copy and paste in there. And even though you're working on it together as a delegation, only one person needs to submit.
So we've talked a lot about how we're doing our resolutions before conference, and you're submitting them before you actually come. So that raises the question of what are we actually doing in committee? So along with debating the resolutions, debating the topic, you're going to be working on amendments. So amendments are basically proposed changes to a resolution. You'll have them as a starting point, and you're going to want to make modifications to help make them stronger. You can modify both the preambulatory clauses and the operative clauses, and your amendment can make as many changes as you want. This is how you're going to strengthen resolutions and try and make them more cohesive, try and make them stronger. In terms of how you're bringing amendments to the floor, you're going to do that with a motion, and it's going to be after the amendment's been submitted to the chair, it'll just take 1/3 of the body to bring it to the floor. And then at the end, during voting procedure, you're going to vote on whether or not to adopt the amendment into the resolution. In an actual amendment, there's three things you can do. You can strike to remove specific words or remove entire clauses. You can add words or clauses, or if there's a clause that you want to change, you can change specific words within the clause. As an example, this is what a sample amendment looks like. So you have who's submitting it, what resolution you're specifically trying to amend. That's really important so we know what resolution you're working on. And you're striking two operative clauses, and we're adding a third operative clause. And the important thing is that has the proper formatting of an operative clause. Capitalized operative phrase at the beginning, ends with a semicolon because it's not the last operative clause. This is what your amendments are going to look like. If you have questions during committee, talk to your dais. They're there to help you. We do want to kind of give some guidance on just general mistakes to try and avoid. So spell check is going to be your friend here. Spelling and grammar mistakes tend to just slow down the process. So as much as they can be avoided, that'll be very, very helpful. You also don't want to have to deal with taking an amendment off the floor just because you realize there's a grammar mistake and you don't want to have that end up in the final resolution. Another big thing is to remember the difference between preambulatory and operative clauses. You don't want to mix them up. You also don't want to mix up the phrases that you use with them. So remember, your preamps are talking about the history, talking about what's been done, establishing the scenario. The operatives are what's actually being done, what you are trying to do as your UN body. The other thing, as we talked about, operatives and preamps end differently. They have different punctuation. So you want to make sure you're using the right punctuation when writing your clauses. In addition, subclauses can be a little bit confusing. So one big thing with subclauses that we see happen a lot is you just have one subclause, or kind of what can be called a hanging subclause. That's not something you can actually do in a resolution. Because if we think about what the purpose of a subclause is, that's to basically list out specific things. And a list of one isn't a list. So if you find you're writing a clause, it has one subclause, you want to figure out how can I just incorporate that into the actual operative clause. So here's an example where we have an improper one, where we have our operative and a subclause, but because there's only one subclause, we want to incorporate that into the clause, just write one more fully fleshed out operative clause. In addition, here is an example with another improper use of subclauses. So what we can see is they have what are called sub-subclauses. So when you have subclauses of a subclause, that's not something that you're able to do. So what we would want to do is incorporate that BI and BII into B. We'd never want to see those sub-subclauses in our resolutions or in our clauses. The other thing is we talked about your operative clauses should start with that operative phrase. That should only happen at the beginning of the clause. So at the beginning, right after the number. So where we have calls upon, that's good, but we shouldn't have takes note of in the subclause. In addition, we talked about not wanting to confuse the phrases between operatives and preempts. Takes note of is looking back. That's looking at what has already been done. So what's in C shouldn't even be an operative clause. That should be a preambulatory clause. Here is an example of uh, basically the same phrase or the same clause written with and without subclauses. We don't want to scare you away from using subclauses entirely, but we do want you to be careful with using them because in most cases you can get away without using subclauses and it's going to make your resolution a little bit easier to read and just generally a little bit stronger. So here's an example that you can read both with and without subclauses. And the important thing with our subclauses, we don't have any operative phrases in them. We don't have just one. And it's basically listing out options, which is what we want to be using subclauses for. In terms of wrapping up some big key takeaways, more than anything, you're going to be relying both while writing your resolutions and in committee on your research. So doing good research is absolutely crucial. In addition, for your GA resolutions especially, those are being submitted as one delegation. You and your team are submitting one for your country. So you want to make sure that you actually work on them as a team. Everyone should be knowledgeable about the resolution for the GA topic. In addition, we really do want to open the door for you guys to be creative. With these resolutions, we're not just looking at replicating exactly what the UN has done in the past. We want to see your creative solutions. We want to see what you guys can come up with to solve these challenging problems. As a reminder, committee resolutions, so the ones for your actual committee, are due midnight on February 16th. And then your GA resolutions are due at midnight on the 27th. We're not going to be accepting paper resolutions at Mayman. Instead, you're going to be doing your amendments at Maven. With that, thank you guys for attending, and please do reach out if you have any questions. We as staff are here to help.
Thank you.